What if everything you thought you knew about the royal family wasn't the full story? For years, whispers have echoed through the internet. Strange timelines, missing details, and a level of secrecy that even die-hard royal watchers couldn't ignore. But here's the question no one in the palace ever wants to answer out loud. Why does this story refuse to die? Is this just another wild conspiracy? Or is there something buried so deep inside the royal system that it can only be handled in silence? Because suddenly things are changing. Web pages quietly updated. Titles shifting without explanation. Doors that once seemed open, now firmly shut. And at the center of it all, a story that was once laughed off as internet noise, now being whispered in much more serious circles. So, what really happened behind palace walls? Why are certain details still so carefully guarded? And most importantly, what does this mean for the future of a prince who once stood just steps away from the throne? Tonight, we're diving into the timeline, the rumors, the reactions, and the uncomfortable questions that refuse to go away. Because in the world of royalty, silence doesn't always mean nothing is happening. Sometimes it means everything is. Dim lights, closed doors, and a story that refuses to stay buried. At the center of it all are Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Once the monarchy's modern fairy tale, now its most unpredictable wildcard. A prince who walked away from centuries of tradition. An actress who stepped into the world's most guarded institution and, depending on who you ask, either tried to change it or shattered it. Their journey didn't start with scandal. It started with applause. Remember the wedding? Global headlines, celebrity guests, a new era for the royal family. For a moment, it felt like the monarchy had finally caught up with the 21st century. But behind that carefully choreographed spectacle, cracks were already forming. Because the royal system isn't just about love stories, it's about rules, protocol, control. And from day one, insiders whispered that Meghan didn't play by those rules. Staff turnover inside the palace quietly spiked. Reports of tension with senior royals started leaking. Small stories at first, disagreements over schedules, traditions, expectations. But then those whispers turned into headlines. The split from royal duties, explosive. The move to California, even more so. And that interview, the one that sent shockwaves across the globe, suddenly turned private family tension into public drama. Lines were drawn, sides were taken. And the distance between the Sussexes and the rest of the royal family wasn't just physical anymore, it was political. But here's where things get interesting. Because while the world focused on the obvious drama, the interviews, the deals, the public statements, another conversation was quietly growing in the background. A much darker, more controversial narrative. One that didn't trend on mainstream headlines at first, but spread like wildfire in online forums and late-night discussions. Questions. The questions about timelines, about details that didn't quite add up, about why certain royal traditions were suddenly abandoned without clear explanation. At the time, those questions were dismissed, written off as conspiracy theories, tabloid noise, internet speculation gone too far. Until they weren't, because recently something shifted. Not a dramatic press conference, not a bold announcement. No, something far more subtle. Changes that only the most obsessive watchers would notice. Royal profiles quietly edited, language adjusted, positions subtly repositioned. The kind of moves that don't scream for attention but absolutely demand it. And then came the moment that turned curiosity into suspicion. An alleged internal communication, never officially confirmed but widely discussed, hinted that certain records were being reviewed for accuracy. Harmless wording on the surface. But in the world of the monarchy, every word is chosen with surgical precision. Accuracy of what? And why now? That's when the online speculation exploded. Screenshots started circulating. Anonymous accounts claiming insider knowledge began dropping cryptic posts. One viral thread even claimed that a former staff member had raised concerns years ago, but was ignored. True? False? No one could say for sure, but the timing was impossible to ignore. And then, just as the noise reached a peak, came the first real twist. A leaked message, allegedly from a private group chat between former palace aides, began making the rounds. In it, one line stood out: "Everything will make sense once the records are fully examined." That was it. No context, no explanation, just enough to send the internet into chaos. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about personality clashes or royal drama anymore. This was about something deeper, something structural, something that, if proven, could ripple far beyond one couple and into the very foundation of the institution itself. So, the question now isn't just what happened. It's what's about to come out. Because if there's one thing history has taught us about the royal family, it's this: they don't react quickly. They don't react loudly. But when they do react, it's never without a reason. And just when it felt like the story couldn't get any more chaotic, it did. Because what started as quiet speculation didn't stay quiet for long. It exploded. Within hours, hashtags began trending across platforms. Twitter, sorry X, was on fire. Threads dissecting every timeline, every public appearance, every statement ever made by Meghan Markle and Prince Harry started gaining millions of views. People weren't just watching anymore, they were investigating. One viral post read, "Why were official protocols suddenly skipped? This isn't about privacy anymore, it's about consistency." Another went even further. "Something doesn't add up, and the silence is louder than any denial." And just like that, the internet split into two sides. On one side, loyal supporters defending Meghan and Harry, calling the entire controversy a targeted smear campaign. They argued this was just another attempt by powerful institutions to discredit outsiders who dared to challenge tradition. On the other, skeptics who believed the questions deserved answers. They weren't buying the idea that everything was just coincidence. To them, the pattern was too obvious to ignore. And then came the second twist. Major media outlets, ones that had previously stayed completely silent on these rumors, started shifting their tone. Not directly confirming anything, but asking questions. Careful questions. Strategic questions. Phrases like "unanswered inconsistencies" and "ongoing discussions behind palace walls" began appearing in articles. Subtle, but significant. Because when mainstream media starts asking the same questions as the internet, that's when things get serious. But it didn't stop there. A supposed insider, anonymous of course, claimed that a review process had quietly been initiated months ago. According to this source, internal conversations weren't about rumors anymore, they were about documentation. Again, no proof. No official confirmation, but enough to send the narrative into overdrive. And then Hollywood entered the chat. A-list commentators, talk show hosts, and even a few celebrities began hinting at the situation. Nothing direct, no one wanted legal trouble, but the subtext was impossible to miss. One late-night host joked, "Royal drama used to be about crowns and scandals. Now it's about timelines and footnotes." The audience laughed. But online, people weren't laughing. Because suddenly, this wasn't just a royal issue. IT was a global conversation. TikTok creators began breaking down clips frame by frame. YouTube channels dropped deep dives analyzing every possible angle. Even influencers who had never spoken about the monarchy were now posting theories. And the numbers? Insane. Millions of views. Thousands of comments. Endless debates. One comment section summed it up perfectly. "If there's nothing to hide, why does everything feel so hidden?" Meanwhile, news panels started debating the bigger picture. Not just what happened, but what it could mean. Because if even a fraction of these claims held weight, the implications weren't just personal, they were institutional. And that's where the backlash intensified. Critics began questioning not just Harry and Meghan, but the system itself. Why are rules so rigid? Why does it matter how something is done if the outcome is the same? Is this about tradition or control? Supporters pushed back hard. This is exactly why they left. One viral post read, "No matter what they do, it's never enough." But opponents weren't convinced. "Rules don't disappear just because you don't like them," another replied. The divide wasn't just growing, it was turning into a full-blown digital war. And right in the middle of it all, silence from the palace. No denial, no confirmation, just carefully measured distance. Which, ironically, only made things louder. Because in the absence of answers, people create their own. And then, just when it seemed like the story had reached its peak, a new detail surfaced. A quiet update, barely noticeable to the average person. But to those watching closely, it changed everything. Because it suggested that whatever was happening behind the scenes wasn't slowing down. It was accelerating. So now the question isn't just who's right or wrong. It's this. What happens if this doesn't stay online? What happens when speculation turns into something official? And more importantly, who's prepared for what comes next? And just when it seemed like the storm had reached its peak, everything shifted again. Because behind the noise, behind the debates, behind the endless speculation, something far more serious was quietly unfolding. It didn't come from a headline. It didn't come from a press conference. It came from a document, not public, not officially released. But according to multiple whispers circling the same tight inner circles, a document that allegedly raised one question the palace could no longer ignore. Do the current records fully align with constitutional expectations? That single line, if true, changes everything. Because this was never just about public opinion. This was always about rules. The kind of rules that don't trend online but quietly decide who belongs and who doesn't. And suddenly the narrative flipped. This wasn't just about rumors anymore. It was about verification. According to growing speculation, senior figures tied to King Charles III had already been briefed. Not with gossip, but with summaries, reviews, assessments. The kind of language that signals something official is at least being considered. Still no announcement. Still no direct confirmation. But something even more telling. Movement. Royal watchers began noticing subtle but undeniable shifts. Mentions adjusted. Positions reframed. The kind of quiet recalibration that doesn't happen unless decisions are being prepared behind closed doors. And then came the moment that truly sent shockwaves through the online world. A legal analyst, speaking on a major broadcast, dropped a statement that instantly went viral. If any internal review ever challenges established records, the implications wouldn't just be personal, they would be constitutional. Constitutional. That word hit differently. Because now we're not talking about headlines or social media theories. We're talking about the framework that holds the entire system together. And that's when people started asking the question no one had dared to ask before. What if this doesn't end quietly? What if this leads to something official, something on record? Because if even a small part of these discussions becomes public, it won't just reshape one story. It could force the entire institution to respond in a way it has avoided for years. Meanwhile, the silence from Meghan Markle and Prince Harry has become just as loud as the palace's. No detailed statements. No direct clarifications. Just distance. Strategic? Intentional? Or something else entirely? Because here's the uncomfortable reality. In a world where every detail is documented, archived, and analyzed, silence doesn't stop a story. It stretches it. And right now, this story is stretching into something far bigger than anyone expected. Some insiders believe this is just the beginning of a longer process, one that could take months, maybe even years, to fully unfold. Others think a major turning point is closer than anyone realizes. But almost everyone agrees on one thing. This isn't over. Not even close. Because the deeper this goes, the more questions it creates. What exactly is being reviewed behind closed doors? Why now, after all this time? And if something does come out, who does it impact the most? The answers aren't here yet. But the buildup? It's impossible to ignore. And if history has taught us anything about the royal family, it's this. The biggest revelations don't arrive with noise. They arrive quietly, and then change everything all at once. So stay watching, because the next update might not just add to the story, it might rewrite it completely. So now it all comes down to you. After everything we've just broken down, the timelines, the questions, the quiet changes, the reactions, what do you actually believe is going on here? Is this just another overblown internet theory that spiraled out of control? Or is this one of those rare moments where the public starts noticing cracks before the official story catches up? Because let's be real for a second, when something keeps resurfacing again and again, when details keep getting reanalyzed, and when silence replaces clear answers, it naturally raises curiosity. And curiosity is exactly what's driving this entire situation right now. But here's where it gets even more interesting. If this really is just speculation, then why hasn't it completely died out? And if it's not, then what exactly is being kept behind closed doors? Do you think long-standing royal rules still matter in today's world? Or are they being used in ways we don't fully understand yet? And most importantly, if anything official ever comes out, do you think it would change how people see the monarchy forever? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to know where you stand on this, because this isn't just a story anymore, it's a full-blown debate. If you found this breakdown interesting, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps push these discussions further. And don't forget to subscribe, because this situation is still developing, and if anything new surfaces, you already know we're going to break it down right here. Turn on notifications too, because the next update could come at any moment, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. This story isn't finished. In fact, it might just be getting started.